most interesting things about human behavior is how easily people are convinced by decisions that feel easy in the moment. If something takes very little effort today, many people assume it must also carry very little consequence tomorrow. Because there is no immediate cost, the decision starts to feel pleasant, almost as if life has quietly offered something for free. Yet life rarely works in a way where anything truly arrives without a price. Every decision carries some kind of payment, even if that payment is not collected right away. The problem is that the timing of the payment is often separated from the moment the choice is made, which makes it easy for people to underestimate the real cost. Think about how often people choose the option that feels comfortable in the moment. Someone might decide to postpone learning a skill that could improve their opportunities. Another person might decide discipline can wait until tomorrow, believing that one small delay could not possibly affect the direction of their entire future. Since nothing dramatic happens the next day, the decision feels justified. The mind slowly forms a quiet conclusion that the choice carried no real consequence. The day after postponing effort looks almost the same as the day before. The person wakes up, follows their usual routine, and sees that life appears unchanged. On the surface, it seems like nothing important was lost. But the true cost of many decisions is not meant to appear immediately. Life often allows someone to enjoy the comfort of the decision first, while the cost slowly builds somewhere out of sight. During that time, the person may continue making similar choices, each one appearing harmless on its own. What makes this pattern dangerous is not one single decision. A single choice rarely decides the direction of an entire life. The real danger comes from the pattern that forms when many small decisions begin pointing in the same direction. Imagine someone who repeatedly chooses convenience instead of preparation. One day they skip studying something important because it feels unnecessary. Another day they delay practicing a skill because there seems to be plenty of time later. Each choice feels small, and because the immediate result is invisible, the mind begins to treat the behavior as acceptable. Soon, the pattern becomes normal. What once felt like a temporary shortcut slowly becomes the standard way of handling responsibility. The person becomes comfortable postponing effort because life has not yet shown any obvious consequences. Comfort can be very persuasive when it arrives disguised as harmless convenience. It quietly suggests that everything will probably work out later, and that effort can always be applied at a more convenient time. Since nothing appears to fall apart right away, the illusion grows stronger with each repeated decision. Many people eventually reach a point where they feel they have discovered a kind of secret. They start believing certain responsibilities can be delayed indefinitely without creating serious problems. Because the bill has not yet arrived, they assume the transaction required no payment at all. The problem with that belief is that reality operates with far more patience than most people expect. Life does not rush to show the consequences of every decision right away. Instead, it quietly records the direction those decisions are moving a person over time. During that process, a person may feel completely comfortable. The absence of immediate feedback creates a sense of safety, as if the choices carry no long-term significance. The person may even encourage others to adopt the same relaxed attitude toward effort and preparation. What they cannot see is that every comfortable decision is slowly building a structure that will eventually reveal itself. Each day adds another small piece to that structure. Each repeated choice strengthens the direction the person is moving. The illusion of free choices continues as long as the consequences remain invisible. For weeks, months, or even years, Someone may move forward, believing they have avoided the cost that normally comes with discipline and effort. They may think they have found a way to live comfortably while still expecting impressive results in the future. But life has never operated on that arrangement. Results are not created by hope or intention alone. They are built through the steady accumulation of decisions that either support progress or quietly prevent it. Every time someone chooses comfort instead of preparation, certain opportunities become less likely to appear. Every time responsibility is avoided, certain forms of growth are postponed. These changes may not be obvious at first, but they gradually shape the landscape of the future. What looks like a harmless decision today is actually a small vote for the kind of life that will exist tomorrow. Each vote may seem minor on its own, but thousands of them eventually decide the outcome of the election. The illusion of free choices disappears the moment someone begins to see this process clearly. Once a person understands that every decision carries either a delayed cost or a delayed reward, the entire structure of daily behavior begins to look different. Suddenly, the small decisions no longer feel insignificant. Choosing comfort instead of effort no longer seems harmless. It becomes clear that what feels easy today may become expensive tomorrow. Life does not remove the price attached to our decisions simply because the payment has been postponed. It only delays the moment when that price becomes visible. During that delay, people often continue making the same choices that created the situation in the first place. That is why many people move through long periods believing they have avoided the normal rules of cause and effect. The absence of an immediate bill creates the illusion that the transaction required no payment. Only later does the truth begin to appear. The moment someone understands that every choice carries a cost, the illusion starts losing its power. What once looked like a free decision now appears for what it truly is: an agreement to pay a price later. And life, with remarkable patience, never forgets to collect. One of the most deceptive things about life is that consequences are not always immediate. A person can make certain decisions for a long time without seeing any visible reaction from the world around them. Because nothing appears to change right away, the mind begins assuming that nothing important is happening beneath the surface. This delay can be very convincing. When someone postpones an important responsibility and nothing dramatic happens the next day, it becomes easy to believe the decision carried no real importance. The person wakes up, goes through their daily routine, and finds that life looks exactly the same as it did before. From the outside, it appears as if the world has quietly accepted the behavior without objection. No alarm sounds, no opportunity disappears instantly, and no dramatic consequence shows up demanding attention. Because the result remains invisible, the person becomes more comfortable repeating the behavior again. Life has a way of allowing people to postpone payment for certain decisions. Someone may delay learning the skills needed for advancement. Another person might ignore opportunities that require effort and preparation. In many cases, nothing happens right away to show that those decisions have started shaping the future. The days continue moving forward normally. The person continues working, resting, socializing, and living life as usual. Since the consequences remain hidden for a while, the person begins assuming the cost may never appear at all. This period of delay can last much longer than most people expect. Sometimes it stretches across years, giving the impression that the earlier decisions truly carried no serious effect. The longer the delay continues, the stronger the illusion becomes that certain responsibilities can be avoided without lasting consequences. However, while the consequences may be delayed, they are never canceled. During the quiet period when everything appears normal, something else is happening beneath the surface. The small decisions repeated each day are slowly shaping the range of possibilities that will exist later. Imagine a person who repeatedly chooses not to develop a skill that could expand their opportunities. At first, the decision feels harmless because their current situation remains stable. The job continues, the paycheck arrives, and life moves forward without interruption. Over time, however, the world around that person keeps changing. Industries evolve, expectations increase, and opportunities begin favoring people who prepared themselves earlier. The person who postponed learning may not notice these changes at first because they develop gradually. Each year passes with only small differences from the year before. The person remains comfortable believing their earlier decisions were harmless because nothing dramatic has happened. Yet quietly, the range of options available to them has begun shrinking. Deferred consequences often appear through limitation rather than sudden loss. Instead of a dramatic event announcing a problem, the person simply notices that certain doors are no longer opening. Positions that require new abilities remain out of reach, and opportunities that once seemed possible begin appearing less often. What makes this situation difficult to recognize is that the connection between cause and effect may be separated by many years. The person experiencing the limitation may not immediately connect it to decisions made long ago. To them, it simply feels as though circumstances changed without explanation. Life rarely presents the consequences of behavior with a detailed explanation of how they developed. Instead, it simply reveals the results that have been forming quietly over time. The person may feel surprised by the outcome because the earlier decisions seemed so small when they were made. Yet the accumulation of those small decisions has been shaping the outcome for years. Each postponed responsibility added another delay to progress. Each ignored opportunity quietly removed a possible path that could have existed later. The delay between action and consequence creates the dangerous impression that behavior can continue without affecting the future. Because the payment does not appear immediately, people often assume the bill has been forgotten entirely. But life works on a system that carefully records patterns. It does not rush to show the results of those patterns because many outcomes take time to develop. Just as a field needs months to reveal what was planted, the results of behavior also need time before they become visible. During that growing period, everything may look calm and unchanged. A person might look around and see no evidence that earlier decisions are shaping anything important. The field looks quiet, and the soil shows nothing about what is developing underneath. Eventually, however, the season arrives when the results must appear. The field reveals what has been planted, whether intentionally or through neglect. In the same way, the consequences of postponed responsibility eventually show up in the form of limited progress, missed opportunities, or abilities that were never fully developed. Deferred consequences do not appear suddenly because life wants to surprise anyone. They appear gradually because many outcomes take time to mature. The years between decision and result are simply the time required for those outcomes to take shape. Understanding this helps explain why some people seem to move through life without consequences for a long time. It is not because their decisions have no effect. It is because the results of those decisions are still forming beneath the surface. Eventually, the moment arrives when the accumulated effects can no longer remain hidden. What once seemed harmless begins revealing its influence on the present situation. Opportunities that could have existed are no longer there, and the gap between expectation and reality becomes easier to see. At that moment, many people feel as if something unfair has happened. They may believe life suddenly changed without warning. In reality, life did not change suddenly at all. It simply revealed the outcome that had been quietly forming for years. Deferred consequences are not mysterious forces appearing without cause. They are simply the delayed results of patterns that were allowed to continue long enough to shape the future. And when that future finally becomes visible, the connection between past decisions and present circumstances becomes clear. There comes a moment in many lives when the distance between expectation and reality becomes impossible to ignore. For a long time, someone may move forward with a clear picture in mind about how things will eventually turn out. They may believe success will arrive naturally with time, or that the future will somehow correct the small delays and overlooked responsibilities of the past. For years, nothing seems to challenge that belief. Life continues in an ordinary way, and the absence of immediate consequences allows the person to feel confident that everything is still progressing as expected. Then, one day, a moment arrives when the results of many earlier decisions are suddenly standing right in front of them. It may happen during a conversation when someone the same age describes opportunities that seem far out of reach. It might occur when a person reviews their finances and realizes the progress they once expected never appeared. Sometimes it arrives during a quiet moment of reflection when someone compares where they are with where they once thought they would be. That moment can feel uncomfortable because it brings a clarity that had been avoided for years. The person begins to understand that their current situation is not the result of one sudden event. Instead, it is the accumulated result of many small choices made gradually over time. The gap between intention and outcome suddenly becomes visible. For a long time, the person may have believed they were still heading toward a certain destination. But when they pause and look honestly at their situation, they begin to see that the direction of their daily decisions was quietly leading somewhere else. This is what it feels like when reality sends the bill. It is not an angry message or a punishment delivered without reason. It is simply the presentation of results that have been forming quietly for a long time. Life does not send the bill with loud announcements. Instead, it reveals the outcome through the circumstances that now exist. The person begins to see the opportunities that never appeared, the progress that remained slower than expected, or the abilities that were never fully developed. At first, the realization can feel discouraging because the person begins to understand that time passed while certain preparations were delayed. They may remember the earlier years when they chose convenience over discipline or postponed responsibilities that could have changed their direction. It is important to understand that this moment of realization is not meant to condemn anyone. Its purpose is clarity. Reality is simply showing the accumulated results of the decisions made along the way. In many ways, this moment is one of the most valuable experiences a person can have. While it may feel uncomfortable, it replaces illusion with understanding. The person no longer has to guess why certain results appeared or why certain opportunities are missing. They begin to see that life has been responding consistently to the patterns of behavior guiding their decisions. Results that once seemed confusing or unfair suddenly become easier to understand when viewed through the principle of cause and effect. When someone recognizes this connection clearly, an important shift begins happening in their thinking. Instead of seeing circumstances as mysterious or accidental, they begin recognizing them as the logical outcome of repeated behavior. This realization often brings mixed emotions. On one hand, it can be difficult to accept that earlier choices shaped the present so strongly. On the other hand, it also reveals something encouraging. The same principle that created the current situation can also create a different future. The moment the bill arrives is also the moment responsibility becomes visible. A person begins to understand that the direction of life is not shaped by isolated events, but by patterns repeated day after day. Once this becomes clear, the person is no longer confused about where change must begin. They understand the future will not change through wishful thinking. It will change through different decisions repeated consistently over time. Many people spend years avoiding this moment of clarity because they are afraid of what they might discover. Yet avoiding the realization does not prevent the results from appearing. The bill still arrives, whether someone chooses to examine their behavior or not. Those who face the moment honestly gain something extremely valuable: the ability to understand how their present situation was created. Instead of feeling powerless, they begin to see that the process shaping their life has always been connected to their daily decisions. Reality sending the bill is not the end of the story. It is simply the moment when the account becomes visible. The person can finally see the total that has been building through years of choices. And once that total becomes clear, the person is no longer living in uncertainty. They understand how the present was built, and that understanding gives them the power to build the future differently. Once a person clearly understands how life produces results, something interesting begins to happen in the way they look at everyday decisions. Actions that once seemed small and unimportant begin to look very different. What once looked like a minor choice now starts to look like a vote for the direction the future will eventually take. Before someone understands this, many people treat daily decisions as if they are completely separate from each other. They believe each day mostly stands on its own, and that one small decision could not possibly influence the outcome of an entire life. Because the effect of a single choice seems so small, it becomes easy to underestimate how important it actually is. However, once someone realizes that life eventually collects the results of repeated behavior, those small decisions start to look very different. The person begins to see that life is not shaped only by a few dramatic turning points. More often it is shaped by the quiet repetition of choices made when no one else is watching. A person may start noticing that the difference between progress and stagnation is rarely caused by one major event. Instead, the difference usually shows up through the accumulation of hundreds of ordinary moments. These are the moments when someone decides whether to keep learning, whether to improve a skill, or whether to postpone the effort again. When these moments are viewed one at a time, they seem almost insignificant. One evening spent reading something useful instead of wasting time may not look like a major achievement. One day of disciplined preparation may not feel powerful enough to change the future. Yet when those decisions repeat over weeks and months, the effect becomes much greater than those individual moments suggest. Knowledge begins to build, ability slowly improves, and confidence grows naturally from preparation. At the same time, the opposite pattern can quietly produce a very different outcome. A person who repeatedly postpones effort may not notice any immediate loss. One evening of delay seems harmless, and a second evening feels just as small. However, when that pattern becomes routine, months can pass without meaningful progress. The person may still hope for significant results, but the preparation needed to create those results has not been happening. The power of daily decisions only becomes clear when someone looks at the process over time. One action rarely changes a life overnight. Instead, the future is shaped through the steady accumulation of behaviors that either move a person forward or quietly keep them in the same place. When this idea becomes clear, discipline begins to look very different. Before understanding this, discipline often appears unpleasant because it requires effort in the present moment. Many people assume avoiding effort today simply means enjoying greater comfort. What they eventually realize is that avoiding effort today usually means paying a larger price later. The comfort that seemed appealing at the moment slowly turns into limitation as time passes. Once someone clearly sees this connection, discipline stops looking like a burden and begins to look more like an investment. The effort required today is not just a sacrifice. It becomes a contribution toward a future that will eventually reflect the work being done now. Each small decision begins to carry more meaning because the person understands those choices are quietly shaping tomorrow's circumstances. Choosing to prepare today increases the opportunities that may appear later. Choosing to learn something new expands the range of possibilities that may exist in the future. Daily actions begin looking less like isolated tasks and more like building materials. Every productive habit adds another brick to the structure a person is building for the years ahead. Over time, that structure becomes strong enough to support opportunities that would have been impossible without preparation. People who understand this process stop waiting for motivation before they act. They realize that motivation can disappear at any time, but decisions can still be made even when enthusiasm is low. The important factor is not the mood of the moment, but the direction the behavior continues to follow. By making thoughtful decisions each day, a person slowly shapes the environment they will live in later. Skills grow stronger, relationships deepen, and opportunities become more likely because the preparation behind them has been happening consistently. It is important to recognize that the opposite pattern works just as consistently. When someone repeatedly chooses delay instead of preparation, life eventually reflects that pattern as well. The absence of effort slowly produces the absence of progress. One remarkable aspect of this process is how fair it tends to be. Life does not require perfection from anyone. It simply responds